Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Hamdan yuafi ni'mahu kafi mazida. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin fil awwaleen. Wa salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin fil akhirin. Wa salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin fi kulli waqtin wa heen. Wa salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin fil mala'il a'la ila yawmiddin. وصلي وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض من عليها وأنت خير الوارثين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. To begin in the name of God. Thank you. The brother just showed me how to put this on. See if I remember. It's like this. Yeah. To begin in the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful. The Lord of the prophets, the one who sends the prophets to remind mankind of their duty, of their purpose, to remind them of meaning, to give them meaning, and also to remind them how to love, how to care, how to be human. That's why God sends the prophets. Because as much as the human being thinks that he's independent, the human being actually, without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doesn't even know his own identity. It's the ironic thing. Human being sometimes thinks that through reason or through his own intellect that he can figure everything out. The reality is that without God giving us a criterion, a furqan, we don't really even know where we're from. Because we didn't even see our own selves, we didn't have any cognition, or we didn't have any sense when we were brought into this world. Right? So Allah says, He speaks about this in the Quran, that He brings us forth from the wombs of our mothers, having not known anything. Then He brings us to fruition, He nurtures us, He allows us to become adults. And then after that, there's a time that will come after that will even lose their senses again and become, old. Right? So they say once a man, twice a child. Sort of a saying that they have. So we begin by invoking that God, the God of the prophets, the God of Abraham, the God of Noah, the God of Moses, of Jesus. Allah says in the Quran concerning His identity or His relationship to the human being and to all human beings. He says, say to the people of the book that our God is one God. Our God is one God. It's a misconception in our day and age that the Muslims, they worship a God, but it's not really God. It's a different God from the Christians or the Jews, right? That the Christians don't worship God, they worship Allah. But many people don't understand that the word for God in Arabic, it's ilah, and when we say Allah, it's basically just the God, right? So we invoke this God to give us success on this particular evening in making our way back to Him, coming to know Him, and also coming to know our own purpose. And coming to know how we can heal, how we can regulate ourselves, how we can connect to Him, connect to the world around us, and even connect to other human beings. And to be dutiful to one another, to be compassionate with one another, and to be merciful with one another. Maybe a simple message, but often not so easily, obtained by many people. Right? Sometimes the message that sometimes the message that we hear, or we see on the news goes very much against this, right? That people are not too compassionate, or Muslims sometimes are not compassionate, but that's not really something that goes against Islam or the religion, or religion in general. It doesn't go against that. What that speaks to, like this lack of compassion, it speaks to a distance from religion, a distance from God. So you can't hate in the name of God. You're not going to hate or despise another human being in the name of God. That's not how it works. That disposition or that want or that inclination towards hate, dislike, rancor, that's something from the lower self that we call the ego. That's an egotistical tendency to be, a person filled with hate or jealousy. These are baser desires, baser aspects of the human being that the religion actually is sent to address, to purify, and allow us to overcome. So God speaks about this role of the messenger in Surah A'raf. This is the chapter of the heights in the Quran, where He speaks about the prophet, and He says, this was the prophet who was written in the scriptures of old, was written in the Bible, and that he is sent to the people as a mercy, and that he comes to the people to remind the people of that which is good, and to allow them to overcome their shortcomings. وَيَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِسْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. And he comes and he removes those shackles that were upon them, those addictions, those things that he allows them to overcome. He gives them cures. He assists them. He helps them. And he reminds them of that which is good. This reminder of that which is good, and in the Arabic language it's called wa'av. Wa'av. Very powerful word. I looked up this word. I'm a journalism major, so I like to look up words. We take words seriously. Beyond words. So looked up this word wa'av. It means at-tadhkir bil khair, to remind of that which is good. Right? Because sometimes as people we forget. I forget. We all forget as a people. They say that the word insan in Arabic, it comes from the word to forget. Nasi, you forget something. That's what the word insan comes from, so we forget. So Allah will then give us the wa'av to remind us of that which is good. Because sometimes we forget that which is good even for our own selves. We think we know what's good for ourselves, but we're often just confused. This is why we would insist as Muslims that without the revelation, without the book, we would forget even what's good for ourselves. Without that connection to our morality, our ethics, we'd forget that which is good, and we would become a people who are confused. Right? So we send our salutations then upon the prophets, peace be upon them all, and we look to explore this sort of prophecy, the transformative aspects of this prophecy in the lecture tonight. So there are many different narrations or stories or hadith that we call them that really capture the religion for us. So we call the hadith, basically the lessons or the stories from the life of the Prophet, his teachings. Many different ahadith like this, or different narrations like this. These reach us by way of chains of transmission down the ages. This is what we call sanad. These are verified chains of transmission that basically we know all the narrators going back 1400 years, we know the narrators of these ahadith. Many different ahadith that speak about the Prophet, speak about Islam, that summarize the religion for us. Give us a synopsis, right? Gives us the khulasa, the synopsis of religion. One of the most important hadith that I've found in this regard is the hadith that we call the hadith of Jibreel, or the narration of Gabriel. So narration of Gabriel, I'll try to keep it short because we have some, effectively we want to abstract the hadith. We want to take those things that are very much pertinent to us from the hadith and put them on the whiteboard. So forgive me if we try to speed up a little bit with speaking about the hadith. So in this particular hadith, many different narrators of the hadith. The narrator that we usually hear narrating this hadith is a man called Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar, the son of al-Khattab. His story begins as he was a polytheist who buried his daughter. I mentioned this in the khutbah today. So he was a polytheist who buried his daughter. That has remained in the history books, probably for the wisdom that we can understand who Umar was, who he was, and what he was to become. This is one of my theories of why that's still there. Because it's easy if Muslims just wanted to say, okay, we love Umar so much, let's not mention this bad thing. Let's just erase it from the history books, right? But no, it's still there. They record these things that we can understand the transformative nature of the religion, right? So Umar, he narrates this hadith that he was sitting with the Prophet one day, and then a man dressed in all white comes up and sits in front of the Prophet, comes up and sits, doesn't smile, doesn't really greet, but imagine that this is the Prophet ﷺ. The man comes up and looks at him directly. Sits here, looks at him like this, puts his hands on his thighs, and is looking him directly in the face. And he says, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, inform me about Islam. Inform me about Islam, this religion. What is this Islam? Now, when we hear Islam, we usually think, okay, Islam is just the name of the religion. But we understand in this hadith something else is going on. Because we're going to see more detail in this particular hadith. We're going to see a lot of detail. We're going to see basically something we can understand now as being the pinnacle of religion, or like the quintessence of the faith, or the complete capturing of the faith, or the peak of the faith, like the bird's eye view of the faith, or like, I don't know, I don't know what's the best camera out nowadays, but the DSLR best camera picture of the religion, best illustration, best capture, right? This is what the Hadith Jibreel represents. So he says, the Prophet, inform me about Islam. The Prophet says, Islam is that you testify that there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is messenger, that you establish the prayer, you establish the fasting of Ramadan, you pay the zakah, and that you do the hajj, the pilgrimage to Allah's house. All right. So then in this we have the 5 pillars of the faith. Then he says, inform me about Iman. Akhbirni anil Iman. Inform me about Iman. Inform me about faith. What is this faith? What is this Iman? Faith may not be the best translation for our purposes. We would say, inform me about belief. Or inform me about felicity. Inform me about that which is going to give me security. This is what Iman, this is the deeper meanings that are mentioned in the word Iman here. Inform me about that which gives security. So the Prophet then mentioned 6 things. He says that you believe in Allah, you believe in the angels, you believe in the prophets, you believe in the books, you believe in the last day, and you believe in what we can call Allah's power, Allah's providence, predestination, that you believe in these things. Right. So the Prophet ﷺ and the angel Gabriel, who, this is the identity of the man, he says, you spoke correctly. Then the angel Gabriel says, inform me about ihsan. This word ihsan, different meanings that it can be rendered as: beauty, beauty or doing good for other people, doing good for the world around you. A lot of different meanings that are here. The Prophet says, in response to this question, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, he says that ihsan is that you worship Allah as if you can see Him. And if you can't see Him, know that He sees you. The angel Gabriel says, you told the truth. Then he says, inform me about the signs of the hour. Inform me about the signs of the hour. And then he says in this particular part, he says, is that you see the people who were once in the desert, maybe they were tending to their livestock, and they were used to be poor, that you see these people, that they have unimaginable levels of wealth. Of course, we would equate this to what we see now in the Gulf countries with the large amounts of wealth that they have due to the oil that they have. So this is what we would understand this prophecy as being. So this is the Hadith Jibreel, quick synopsis of this Hadith Jibreel. So now I want to do a diagram of the Hadith Jibreel, and we're going to focus in, we're going to really zoom in. Today we're going to talk about the last part of the Hadith, which are signs of the hour. Alamat as-sa'a. This is what the angel Gabriel, alayhi salam, peace be upon him, asked the Prophet about at the last part of the Hadith, the signs of the hour. Right? We're going to look to really investigate this, to really break it down. So right now we're going to do a diagram of the Hadith Jibreel. I call it the diagram of Islam, or the summary of the religion. Right? So the diagram of Islam. So the last thing that the angel asked the Prophet, he asks him about the signs of the hour. And we can understand, and there are different narrations that speak about the signs of the hour. And one of the narrations, it says, when amongst the signs of the hour, is that you see the slave girl give birth to her master. Very interesting turn of phrase, and the scholars have dropped so much ink explaining or trying to explain what it means. That the slave girl gives birth to her master. So the Prophet, we should know about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him. He says, "Utitu jawami'ul kalim." I've been given very, very concise speech that captures unlimited meaning. Right, so the Prophet will say something, and the statement or the word or the set of words is intended to capture really a depth of meaning. That's what the Prophet's doing here in this particular hadith. So a lot of different commentaries that I've seen concerning this particular statement of the Prophet. I don't want to mention those commentaries, but I want to abstract a general theme from those commentaries. Right? The general theme that we get from the commentaries as it concerns the signs of the hour is that things will be upside down. Society will be upside down. Human beings will be upside down. There will be chaos. It will be a crisis in humanity. A crisis in humanity. Right? That things that we assume to be the case, for example, children respecting their parents, for example, this is something that will be not to be assumed anymore, not something to be taken for granted anymore. Signs of the hour. Right, so that's probably one of the direct meanings of the hadith here, that the parents become like slaves for their children, or that the children maybe command the parents or disrespect the parents and treat the parents like slaves. Of course, it's something completely unacceptable, and it's something that really, it's one of these things that really undercuts the religion. The person was to disrespect his parents. Something really, really problematic in the religion. So here we have at the beginning of the diagram of Islam what we can call humanity or universal values. So universal values. And these universal values, we intend to say here that they're the bedrock of the religion. Universal principles / values. And these are things that we actually share with people of other faiths. Right? We share these values with people of the Jewish faith or of the Christian faith. We can then also call this humanity at large. And things or principles, ahkam or rulings or commandments to regulate this humanity, to keep this humanity safe, to protect it from shaitan, to protect the fitra, your primordial state, your spirituality, your heart, your ruhaniyah, to protect that from dark influences. And this is really the bedrock of the faith. And this is really what the faith is geared towards doing. Right? The faith is geared towards protecting your heart, protecting your soul, protecting your humanity. Okay? So we can call this humanity at large, which is going to be the prime topic of the evening, but I want to finish the diagram. So then we have Islam, and we have above that Iman, we have above that Ihsan, excellence, Iman, faith, Islam, practice. Here with these though, with Islam and Iman, I want to say really quickly, and tomorrow we're going to talk about this one. So this today's lecture is going to be an explanation of this and how this allows us to be a functional community, a functional American community, or a functional religious community. You have to focus on humanity, right? So we're going to talk about that tonight. What a healthy community looks like, or any healthy religious community, what it looks like. The activities that it will engage in, the things that it will do. And the assumption is that if the community is not doing these things, then it's not healthy, right? Doesn't matter how much they're praying, Doesn't matter how much they fasted. If these human principles aren't in place, if you're not respecting your neighbor, if you're not looking to feed the poor, if you're not worried about maybe the Christian across the street, if you're not, for example, in tune with the needs of the masakin, the downtrodden, the people that the rest of the society forgets about, if you're not in tune with their needs, if you're not worried about that, then everything else above this basically doesn't matter. Is that clear? You're not in tune with the needs of the people. If you're not in tune with the indigenous Islamic movement, for example, we'll talk about that tonight. You're not in tune with the struggles around the Muslim world. Or if you think that's none of my business, it's not affecting me. If you're not thinking about the Afghan refugees, if you're not thinking about the Palestinian question, and trying to actively maybe find a solution and pray for them, pray for Palestine and pray for that entire area, that we as human beings come to our senses. If we're not worried about that, if we're not worried about humanity at large, then nothing else matters. Islam, Iman, doesn't matter. Be very, very clear about this. If we're not worried about human issues first, our humanity at large first, then nothing else matters in the religion. This is real. Maybe some of you would say, what is he talking about? If you want to maybe come have an example of what I'm talking about, you can ask yourself the question, does it seem that some people pray, they have so much worship, they're so religious, but if you were to go around them, you just feel really repulsed, or they have no manners, they're rude, but they pray so much. It seems like the person is you're doing so much in the religion, you're so much religiosity, but the person's toxic personality will force people out of the places of worship, or is rude, or will use foul language. How is that possible? It goes back to what we're talking about. Now this person, because of the warped perspective and the warped approach to religion, that person becomes warped, and that person effectively loses their humanity. Right? And this is real. This happens in our communities. One of the things that we really have to come to terms with as people of faith. So these sorts of people, they don't really represent religion. They represent a shadow of religion. It's like a shadow religion. It's like something else. It's like subhanAllah, it's like an external shell. But what's inside, it's not Islam, it's not Iman, it's not beautiful, it's not light, it's not nur. The Prophet speaks about these people that when they recite the Quran, when they recite the book of God, it doesn't go past their neck. It doesn't affect their heart. And that their affair, it's like an arrow that hits its target, but doesn't stop there. It goes and transgresses beyond. It just doesn't stop. It's like an arrow that goes through the target. Right? Apparently it seemed like, it hit the target, but it goes beyond transgression. Right? So now what we wanted to briefly mention about Islam and Iman is that Islam now, we should know at a deeper level that Islam, our physical practice of religion, it's physical regulation. You physically regulate yourself when you get up and pray Fajr, for example. Physical regulation. It's really, really powerful if you stop to think about it. Sometimes we don't stop to think about it, so we then get disconnected from the meanings of the prayer because we don't stop to think about what we're doing. But we think about the meanings of the prayer. The prayer, why do we pray before sunset? And why do we pray after the zawal, or after the sun reaches its peak in the sky, and a little bit after that? Why do we do that? Why do we pray late afternoon? So these prayers are in accordance with the times and the motion of the sun, that we as believers, we become in tune with the world around us. Just as Allah has made the sun and the moon like clocks for us to measure time, that we become in tune with those movements by praying at these particular times. It's for the same exact reason that we go counterclockwise around the Kaaba, because this is the motion of the planets in the sky. Right? So we also copy that motion. Furthermore, the angels also, they do the exact same motion throughout the earth and also into the heavens. They do this exact same motion. So when you do that, you become in unison with them, you become in sync with them. You become in sync with the planets, the planet around you, and the movement of the moon and the sun. And you have basically a level of, you're in sync with the cosmos. You're in sync with nature and the world around you. Right? This word Islam, we forgot to say this. Islam means submission. Or it means to be in tune with your primordiality. in tune with how God created you originally, in tune with your own spirituality, in tune with your own origins, in equilibrium, in a state of balance, in tune, having a level of calm, right? Being in touch. That's what Islam, the roots of the word Islam. So it's our physical practice, physical regulation of the religion. You notice with everything as it concerns Islam, the 5 pillars, the prayer, the fasting, giving your zakat, doing the hajj, etc. These are physical things. You can see it. You can see me pray. You can see a person abstain from food, i.e. fast, he's fasting. You can see him give his zakat. You can see him say the shahada, the first pillar actually, say that the shahada. You can see him go on the hajj and so on and so forth. These are things that you can see. Physical regulation. Then we have iman, faith, or intellectual regulation. Intellectual regulation, spiritual regulation. What do we mean by that? We mean, one, you can't really see the intellect. You're not going to see faith. You can't see it. It's something that's in the heart. Something that's in your heart, your iman. It's not something that you can see or you can touch. It's not palpable. Show me your belief in God. What are you talking about? Not in the see, you can't see anybody's iman. It's something that it's spiritual, it's intellectual, it's psychological, and this is what it affects actually. So this is this faith or this iman, it's spiritual regulation, psychological regulation. Furthermore, it regulates the way that we see the world around us. It allows us to filter things. It allows us to put things in their proper place. That Allah created, for example, the heavens and the earth for really the sole purpose that we conclude that He exists. This is a dalil pointing back to Him. It comes from faith. That orientation, drawing that conclusion, comes from having the right pillars of faith. Right? And we would say that if a person doesn't have one of these pillars of faith, effectively it leads to intellectual malfunction, psychological malfunction, spiritual malfunction. Right? Literally, that's how we should understand it, that these things regulate who we are, and also it's the primary thing that defines our identity. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Right? That's really our identity. This intellectual regulation, it's like the fundamental part of our identity. As Muslims, we're not defined where we're from, whether that's Pakistan or India, Bangladesh, you're not defined. That's not really your true identity as a Muslim. Your true identity is basically based on what you believe. It goes back to this here, this iman, the spiritual regulation. Right? Okay, then the scholars, and I'm moving too slow, forgive me. The scholars, they say, so this iman, this practice, this physical practice, this physical regulation, this iman, this spiritual regulation, this intellectual regulation, this intellectual orientation, these intellectual pillars, these spiritual pillars, this faith, right? Of course, we should understand when we say faith that in the West, sometimes faith, it means that you're sort of 50-50, or it's like you take a leap of faith, or you're not sure. This is not the Islamic conception of faith. This should be made clear. So in Islam, faith is something what we call confirmation. What sort of confirmation? Means that something is there, you see the proof for it, and then you confirm it. So you see the proof for God, right? Then you confirm it. Then you conclude. Then you testify. Right? So, for example, with the angels, Allah tells us about the angels. He tells us about these pillars. That these things are a part of our faith, and a person can logically conclude, with the rest of the pillars, you can logically conclude certain things about the existence of angels. Right? When we think about the greater cosmology or the greater structure of the heavens and the earth. Right, so that basically allows us to function as believers. And these are things that are basically these are seeds that the believer plants, and these seeds grow and allow the believer to really interact with the world around him in a very, very dynamic way, really, really beautiful way, to really become what Allah put us here on earth for, to become His representative here upon earth. The vicegerent or the Khalifatullah fil ard. Right, Allah says to وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. When your Lord said to the angels, I'm making a representative or a vicegerent in the world. upon the earth. So these two pillars, or these two levels, regulatory levels, or we'd call them, that they effectively deliver. What do they deliver to? Excellence. That a person is empowered by his faith and empowered by his practice. So then you're empowered to do what? To be kind. You're empowered to be beautiful, to do good to yourself, to do good to your family, to do good to your community. That you act based on faith, that your faith compels you to do good. Your faith compels you to spread love. Your faith compels you to feed the poor. Right, so this is now when faith has really taken root in the heart. This is a faith that's empowering, faith that makes a difference, faith that affects the discourse, faith that affects change, right? Faith that's revolutionary. Right? It's powerful. Faith that's revolutionary. Faith that changes things. Right? So this is the excellence, this ihsan. Anyway, taking too long, forgive me. But the universal principles now, this is what we primarily wanted to speak about. Because when it comes to, focusing on what a healthy community looks like, what a spiritually vibrant community looks like, it really goes back to this. Really holding on to these universal values and studying our humanity and studying those things that affect our humanity. It's not a surprise then that actually, if you go to college, they teach you the humanities. This is what you're actually studying. When you study the humanities, you're studying this. All right. So it's like basically our means of interface with the rest of human beings. Our means of interface, our means of connecting to them, having a shared interface or a shared means with other people. This is what it represents. Right. So, with that said, now a few things I wanted to mention. So as it concerns this has to be then a focus for us as believers. It has to be a focus for Christians and Jews as well. It needs to be really be a focus. That which we share, that which we hold in common, which is no doubt our humanity. The Prophet ﷺ in a particular hadith, he gives us a window into this. A Jewish funeral was taking place, and the Prophet saw the funeral, the procession, and he gets up out of respect. The companions, they look at him and they say, that's a Jewish funeral. Do we stand up for them? The Prophet said, isn't this a human being? That's a human soul. There's a respect, there's a sanctity there. There's a isma adamiyya. There's a sanctity to all the sons of Adam. There's a sanctity to human life. Right? So this humanity then has to be studied. It has to be honed, it has to be preserved, it has to be regulated. We have to invest time in preserving our humanity, whether by way of the religion and also what the religion counsels us in protecting ourselves from negative influences, things that would otherwise corrupt our humanity, that would harm us and harm us intellectually. Right? So with this, we're talking about knowing where we are as a people, knowing our shared space, knowing our heritage. That's what we're talking about here. So knowing where we are physically and also intellectually. Knowing the currents or intellectual currents in the modern day time. Right? Understanding how these intellectual currents, how they sometimes will coincide with our own belief system, in our own conceptualization of humanity, and in other ways how it goes against it. These are things to be studied. Of course, maybe beyond the scope of our lecture tonight, but something still to be paid attention to. Where are we? Who are we? What influences us? What shapes our identity? What shapes us? What makes us tick? Right? This is what this is a reference to. So, some characteristics of a healthy Muslim community now, sort of leaving this realm of things. We're going to stay here, we're going to talk about this, but we also want to talk about this as Muslim believers. So we said, as a part of the Islamic identity, And this we should understand, a quick comment about this, that these things aren't hard and fast divisions. There's an interplay between all of these levels. If I could somehow draw it on the board, I would draw these different levels as concentric circles. Circles that basically overlap, coincide. It's like a interplay. This is how Allah made the human being. Very, very beautiful interplay between different aspects, your physical, your spiritual, your psychological, etc. Your physiological, your medical terms, the different aspects, facets to the human being that the religion addresses holistically, right? So that's just a small caveat, small side note. So Islam now, and also going into Iman, one of the primary aspects of a healthy Muslim community is that it's going to look to protect the human identity, but also to define a religious identity. And that religious identity, for us as primarily Sunni Muslims, that identity is Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, people of the Sunnah, and also that they follow the Jama'ah or the consensus of scholars, the Jama'ah, or the majority of the scholars. So it's a particular methodology that we have that then comes to define who we are as believers. And that's really, really important, because this is effectively our belief system, right? That approach to knowledge, for example, that approach to the Quran, that approach to the Hadith, that's effectively what gives us our identity, right? So for example, we can ask the question, can a Muslim be a Muslim and not pray? Right? Can he be a Muslim and not pray? If he, for example, he's lazy with his prayers, he can still be a Muslim. So is the prayer, does that define your identity then as a Muslim? What defines your identity is your belief. What defines your identity is going to be your Iman, your approach to the world around you, your understanding, your faith. This is what's going to define your identity. So this is what we would call, in Arabic terms, Aqidah. Aqidah, it comes from the word uqd. It means that you bind. So the belief system is something to bind people. And to bind people regardless of national origin or what state you're from or what color your skin is, ethnicity, all that doesn't matter. Because this affair is now internal, something that binds you with other human beings internally. Right? So any healthy community is going to look to bind itself along these lines. Are we getting it? And the binds cannot be along lines of race or color, ethnicity, national origin, or I'm from that particular village. Doesn't work here. So your aqidah is what defines your Islam, your aqidah, and that which is going to tie you to the other community of believers. So any healthy Muslim community is going to then have to teach this aqidah. You're going to have to bind yourself to the community of believers by way of that aqidah. That's your shared heritage, right? And that shared heritage, we talked about this word Iman. We talked about it as being security. Subhanallah, I can't choose a better word for it, and I want you to focus on that. Iman is security. That intellectual regulation is security. Protection of your identity, protection of also your humanity. In times where people are kind of going insane and having all sorts of identity crises, right? And we're not giving a value judgment here. We're not saying right or wrong, but it is what it is. We're on the same page. Wrong or right, that's not our business right now. But the fact is, people have identity crises. Am I a man or am I a woman? We would say, as believers, as Muslims, that this is due to a lack of the appropriate regulatory function of religion. Something is not being regulated there properly. Something has gone off, right? That'll be our perspective as believers. With the general assumption, the general understanding that people have a right to choose what they want to do. We can't force our morals or our belief system on any particular person. Very, very important as well. Right? La ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion in religion. So while we can critique, we can have our particular views, we can't say you have to do this or you have to do that, because everybody has their own choice to make in life. Okay. So this aqidah then, this thing that binds, this belief system, right? This orthodoxy, that's the word they also use for it. It's orthodoxy. It effectively binds the community of believers, right? And also protects the community of believers. It protects the identity of the children. Because Muslims coming from overseas, you've been given a level of protection by growing up in Muslim societies and going to the mosque and maybe the Sunday schools, and you learn things in grade school. Here in America, though, that sort of structuring of the identity, or that identity growth, can't be assumed. It's not to be assumed in America. Why? Because it's not an Islamic society. So then this aqeedah, we have to have a different approach to this aqeedah than in the States. It has to be something that we look to kind of remanufacture it in a way that's tailor fit for this country and the challenges that we face here, right? The good news is that our intellectual legacy, our spiritual legacy in this regard, it's rich, has all the answers. I said in the khutbah today, the sermon today, we have everything we need to be successful. That's probably an understatement. We have everything we need and more to be successful. Trust that, believe it. I'd say that's probably the first step in us rectifying our situations and forging an identity in America. I think that's probably the first step. Knowing that your faith has the answers. Your faith is designed, it's built for this, divinely built for this. Intelligent design, as they would call it. Right? Islam, it has all the tools that you need. So this is the belief system, this is the aqeedah. Moving on now, because we wanted to leave time for questions. So moving back down these universal principles, knowing who we are as a people and what influences us, knowing those intellectual influences, knowing what are the philosophical underpinnings of maybe some of those things that we study in school, and do they go against religion, or are they in accordance with religion? These are things to discuss. We don't have time to go in it now, but these are questions like for future research that we have to basically be abreast of. We have to know and understand. These are things to be studied. We can't just assume that all the information in the world is going to be in accordance with our worldview. It's going to be in accordance with what Allah sent in His book. It's not to be assumed. We have to have a critical eye. Right? These things are to be studied with time. Right? Furthermore, and I'll close with this, inshallah ta'ala, being in tune with the needs that the society presents, being in tune with that. Being in tune to the situation on the ground, being in tune with what the youth are facing now, being in tune with the challenges presented by, for example, social media, being in tune with the peer pressures that our children go through in school, being in tune with the addictions that are here in this country. Because the fact is, we as Muslim Americans, we're American. We're American. We go through all the same struggles that other Americans go through. That may sound like 1 + 1 = 2 to many people, but for some people, we kind of on a high horse. We think, that'll never happen to us. No, we are American. We eat the same foods, drink the same water, breathe the same air. It's a shared sort of space, right? So this is then to be paid attention to, the situation on the ground. Last thing that I'll mention here, I'm often asked the question, it seems that, those who convert to Islam kind of have more vigor, or they have more, vigor in the faith, or they have more practice or faith, and what I'd say as it concerns this is that the vigor in the faith, or making the faith functional, one of the primary things about this, accessing this energy in the religion, the energy that it can provide for you, this power, right? Really, it comes from being in tune with your social surroundings, and also being in tune with your heritage, being in tune with your Senate, being in tune with those people who came before you in faith, those people like Malcolm X, those people maybe even from other faith groups that did good for faith in America, being in tune with those indigenous religious movements. This is the key to religion being successful, any religion really. Any religion that detaches itself, that treats religion like it's like a silo or it's like ivory tower, that religion will fade. That religion will die out because it's not in tune with the needs of the people. It'll die out. So then our religion has to be in tune with what the people need, being in tune with, for example, the mental health issues in the community, and also looking to provide service for that. Or looking to address the addictions that exist in our community, the general community, non-Muslim community, and also the Muslim community. Because it's the same addictions. Whether that's to alcohol, to drugs, or to even to pornography and these sorts of things. These exist within our community, and we have to look to address these things head on and look to activate the religion in a way that's going to be relevant. So being in tune with these issues, being in tune with social issues or political issues, right? And engaging that by way of the faith and bringing basically our perspective, our faith to the marketplace of ideas. Also, as a part of this, appreciating the struggle of those who came before us, those who struggled to establish faith in America, and those who also lost their lives for it. So, for example, a person, we should all read his biography, actually, Malcolm X. The brother Abdul actually went to go visit his childhood home a few hours ago. But these are people who have to know, they can't be ignored. You have to know that this man is a part of your spiritual heritage. And ignoring him, you only ignore him to your own detriment. We only ignore the indigenous Islamic movements to your own detriment. We only ignore the outside world in general to our own detriment. Because the fact is, the Christian, Jew, and your Muslim brothers and sisters, right? They're all put on this earth for a particular reason, for you to come to know God. It's important that you then pay attention to what's going around you, paying attention to how you got where you are, what are the influences on you and where you are, and what shapes you, what shapes your identity. Then you look to respond to those challenges with the faith. You look to identify certain challenges and to identify certain maybe negative influences. Right. So with that, we close. So a lot of practical things that we can do, for example, as an Islamic institute. One of the things that we can do is provide pertinent literature and raise the level of literacy. That we have a certain set of books or a curriculum that is engaging, that will open people's eyes and affect hearts and change minds, and give people, basically imbibe or plant the seeds of faith in people's hearts. Basically, that you sort of, download the software, right? That's what the literature does. Right? Having a robust library and a pertinent library that's relevant to the issues that the people are facing in their daily lives. So another thing, welcoming diversity, but that within this diversity you look to bind people by way of iman, by way of the aqidah. That's how you bring people together. And it's how the people interact, and it's how the people will recognize their Muslim brothers and sisters. Right? And also be able to appreciate people from other faiths as well. Because it's funny, I was just speaking to, we're speaking over there at the Interfaith Center, and I had to admit that my time in Interfaith was the most impactful. Dealing with the Jews and the Christians, this was great, but I was surprised to find out, and I'm kind of shy to admit that I benefited the most from the Hindu interfaith minister, in the way that she presented her faith and how she talked about holistic faith. I was very much impacted by her, right? Not to say I agreed with her beliefs, but I can see where she was coming from. And her perspectives and her questions and her teachings allowed me to see, for example, the beauty in Islam, or to understand why we have certain movements, and why we have certain movements in the prayer, right? Or why we raise our hands, and what's the meaning of your hand? There's a meaning there. We don't think about these things often. There's a beautiful meaning there, right? So, So we can stop there, and then we can have questions, inshallah ta'ala. No. Any questions? Your hand? No. Any questions? Bismillah.
Well, I guess not the law. Presentation. I like the fact that you talked about the library, that would enhance the community that you live in.
Yeah.
Is there, or are there any other practical examples that the masjid or the imam or the leaders of the community can do practically to enhance a healthy community?
So 2 things I'd say immediately. Being in tune with the indigenous Islamic experience. And also, so that's one thing, so that has to do with, the civil rights movement. Knowing that intimately. And knowing that, for example, we enjoy certain rights because of those sacrifices. You have to know that. Because ignoring that, basically, it's like the worst sort of ingratitude. That there are people who died so that we can practice this faith, that we can even gather, in interracial gatherings like this before. This wasn't allowed, right? SubhanAllah. So, there are people who died, put their lives on the line, so we can now enjoy our practice of faith. So that needs to be appreciated and studied. This is one. Second thing, feeding the poor. Feeding the poor, being in tune with the needs of the poor people. Being in tune and serving the community. These things will allow very practical things that you will see the effect, the barakah that it brings. The barakah avenues will open up. It's like the heavens will basically open up, right? Whether on an individual level or as a community, right? Feeding the poor. They asked one person went to the Muslim scholar. He said, I'm depressed, I'm feeling down, what can I do? The Muslim scholar told him, go feed the poor. And the person admitted later, I did this and my life has been incredible ever since. Feeding the poor. Right. So Allah speaks about this in the Quran, in Surah Ma'un, where He talks about a person who prays, but that the prayer isn't benefiting him. Right? The person praying, doing this worship, but it's of no benefit to him. Why? Because the person is not concerned about the struggles of the poor, not concerned about the orphan, not concerned about the young child in Palestine whose building was just blown up, not worried about the Afghani refugees, not really worried about that. So his worship then, it's rendered as nothing. Right? So really practical things, being in tune with that experience and feeding the poor, having social services, being in the community. In Florida we have something called Project Downtown, or in multiple cities in Florida they have in the inner cities where the Muslims will go and have, bring lunches. These are important programs. This was always like the bedrock of the religion. And this religion actually, Islam and all of the Abrahamic faiths, these were faiths that were given victory because of people who were, Allah calls them the mustada'afin, or those alladhina stud'ifu, or those people who are deemed to be weak. So you may see a person as being weak, or they're deemed to be weak in society, but Allah is with them. Allah is with these people. You're going to find Allah with the poor people. You're going to find Allah's help. He's going to aid you because of your aid for the poor people. Right, so having these social services, immediate things that can have an immediate impact and bring about really higher levels of success. So two immediate things that I can think of right now that I actually wanted to mention, and you reminded me, so thank you.
Where does, in terms of, callings for, imams, where does, intra-faith and interfaith calling, stand? Are they, equal? Is one, more important than the other in terms of, intra-faith and interfaith?
There really has to be a balance that we remind our Muslim brothers and sisters, interfaith, that we remind them of the good, but that we also take our faith to the street, right? To the street, and also you take it across the street to the church. You take it to the synagogue, and we share in faith. Not to say we want to, force our religion or just convert people. We want to show people who we are. We want to illustrate the beauty of our religion for them, right? We want to inform people and have them know, this is our identity. We believe in the same God. We believe in the same prophets. We want to do good for our communities too. We all want, a bright future for all our children. Right, so I think there has to be a balance between the two. Yeah.
And then how about on the intra-faith?
So interfaith, so amongst the Muslims.
Amongst the Muslims.
Again, balance between the two, both interfaith and interfaith. I think the interfaith, this is sort of what we're doing right now, and trying to figure out how we can properly make our faith long-lived. make it functional, right? And finding the proper means to that. So some of the things that we speak about tonight, it's called the cultural imperative. This is what my teacher calls it, the cultural imperative. Basically, is that Islam, when it goes to different parts of the world, it has to be effectively adapted. That you can't import like Pakistani Islam to America. Not because Pakistani Islam has something wrong with it, but it's because it's tailor fit for a particular context. It's been developed over centuries to basically fit a particular people's culture. Right. So this is the cultural imperative, where Islam. You can think about it. The analogy that this particular teacher he uses is like Islam is like water, and the culture, right? It's like a cup, and the cup maybe has a particular color, and that when the water enters the cup, that the water is going to take the color of that particular cup, right? Or the particular glass. Let's say it's a red glass, right? The water is then going to take that. It's going to adapt to that particular container, right? The cultural imperative. So Muslims, it's something to be engineered. It's something to be thought out. It's just like in this particular building, we had a blueprint, right? But it's a physical blueprint, right? What sometimes we don't focus on is the spiritual blueprint, the spiritual means of success, the spiritual roadmap. Right? Sometimes we don't focus on that. Sometimes, and of course, as not to be too down on ourselves as Muslims. The fact is, we are still. Sometimes some communities are first generation communities, just moving into the second generation, right? We're still figuring things out in many ways, right? Other faith communities have been in America 200 years. And the funny thing is, if you study those faith communities, you'll see they had the exact same struggles that we had. It's documented. It's just a human struggles that we're going through, growing pains, right? But of course, it's up to us as believers. We have the responsibility to go back to our faith, to find that blueprint, and to really craft something that will give longevity and to give success, right? I'd say this is the best sort of intrafaith in calling Muslims to this, calling to Muslims to a faith that's tailor fit and pertinent and relevant to our situation here on these shores.
There is a question online.
Sure.
What should I do in a community where people are feed wrong information about my community and they support the war in my community?
They support the war? Where's she texting from? Or?
Yes, it's
they're being given false information, the Muslims, or? Oh. Well, I'll try to answer with what I've understood. Definitely.
Yeah, he's saying, what should I do in a community where people are feed wrong information about my community and they support the war in my community?
Yeah. So in terms of information now, that's going to fit into here. It's going to fit in here. What I mean by that is that
he's from Afghanistan. I'm in Pakistan right now.
Okay. Yeah, so, how I would answer that is that we as Muslims, we have to really go back to the proper methodology, proper intellectual methodology, proper understanding, using the proper criterion for judging information, that which we can accept and that which this is dubious information, it's unacceptable. Allah says in the Quran, إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا. If somebody comes with you from maybe of a dubious character, you don't really know who the person is, then make sure you clarify or you cross-check that information. Very, very important. So cross-checking information, not just accepting, what every Tom, Dick, or Harry said on the street about this particular issue in the faith, you'd accept it. If you hear something, you want to make sure that you look to confirm that, okay, where is he getting that from? Is it qualified scholarship? Or is it just something, on Sheikh Google, Imam Google, that you just type something in and then some website you get your information from? So you have to look to confirm your information, cross-check it, right? And that's a big topic because we have a crisis in the crisis in qualified scholarship now, and you have a lot of different movements that are a lot of just information out there, and we have to really get back to the proper criterion, proper methodology, proper curriculum, a curriculum that's connected to our heritage, that is basically, there's a scholastic integrity there. We say scholastic integrity, we mean that it's proper, it's sound, it's academically sound. It's not just something somebody made up, or it's not just somebody just made a website and started speaking about Islam because he has a Muslim name. So you think then this person can then be an authority under the religion. No, it's not how it works. So we as Muslims, we have to go back to really our heritage, our usul, or those roots of understanding things properly and understanding the religion properly. I don't mean to be vague. These are difficult topics, so you don't have so much time right now. But it goes back to us reattaching ourselves to qualified scholarship, that we look to learn from people who know what they're talking about and that they're connected to the tradition, right? And not take from people who maybe just studied a book, right? If a person wants to be a doctor, you don't just study a set of books. You have to go to a university. You have to sit for your boards. You have to do fellowship and all these sorts of things. Right? The religion is not really much different. It's a similar sort of process that we have to, when studying the faith and choosing what sort of spiritual doctor we want to go to learn our faith from. You have to make sure the person is qualified. Okay, where did you study? Was it at a university, or did maybe a person just, studied just from Sheikh Google? Go out and just type something in, get a fatwa from some strange website. So we look to really use discretion in what information we accept, right? And being careful about this, especially in this day and age with the information explosion and social media. And anybody who can create a social media account or TikTok or Twitter account can present himself as a religious authority and really spread false information and really, really harm people, right? And even subhanallah, social media, we can talk so much about that. I mean, it said that Facebook is the thing that caused the Arab Spring. Facebook is what caused it, subhanallah. The power of social media, the power of controlling opinion through social media. So we want to be careful with that which we accept from the varying sources, and look to confirm, look to cross-check. Yeah. Wa iyyakum. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, it comes with us attaching the proper value to what the mosque has to offer us. Reattaching ourselves and understanding the value that's here in the worship. That does something for you, that it's good for you. We often don't speak about this, so that people, they just see it as being ritualistic. You go, you pray, and you go home. Right? So we have to really shape the faith, or speak about the faith, understand the faith, and orient ourselves to it in a way that we understand this is the utmost sort of benefit that the Fajr, for example, in Jama'at will give you. Right? And this is how the prophets would speak about going to the prayer. How the Prophet would speak, he said, if you knew what was inside the prayer for you, you would go to it even if you had to crawl on your knees. That's how he speaks about the prayer. Then I think this is where we should start with encouraging people to come back to the masjid. Right, that this prayer, that there are benefits for you both in this life and also the next. All sorts of a list of things that we can make immediate benefits for a person. More energy throughout the day when you get up and pray in the masjid. More energy in the day. More focus. More balance. That's going to make you smarter. Seriously. Right? It has these benefits for you, coming to pray in your houses of worship. Because what you're doing is basically giving yourself an intellectual charge, or a spiritual charge when you come to the masjid. Right? You're rubbing your shoulders with the angels. Right? And they're praying for you, they're blessing you. So these things, we have to remind the community. So that, and also giving people incentive to come to the masjid, having, for example, breakfast program, where you also you do things that you pray, maybe you have a short sort of speech, but you look to bind the community, bring people together. You have, maybe a short breakfast. Maybe we can have a potluck and these sorts of things. These things really work to bring people back, because the people then start to attach not only a spiritual value but also a social value. You come and meet people, come and engage. You come to discuss, socialize. So these things are a means of really bringing people into the masjid and attaching them to the house of worship. This is the function that the masjid served in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a multi-purpose area. It wasn't only for worship. Rather, they would worship there. They even had like military ceremonies there, all sorts of things right there inside the masjid that they would do. So the masjid, if we make it like a multi-purpose area, that, it's prayer, but also there are going to be different things as well to really bring people in and to really connect their hearts to the places of worship. Because the thing is, once the heart connects and the heart feels at home, it's going to be attached. It's going to want more. It's going to want to come back. The heart. This is how the hearts connect to the houses of worship. Right.
Or are we living the prophecy of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? There's going to come a time, the one who's holding on his religion as if he's holding on a piece of charcoal, a fire he was dropped it.
Yeah. So there's no doubt that we live in such times that it's difficult to practice. There's no doubt about that, and that's it's a challenge, but it must be a challenge that we have. It's a challenge that we can meet and we must meet. All right, and we must know, have the certainty that the religion gives us the tool to meet the challenges and to conquer the challenge. Something that we have to know. Right, this is the Safinat Nuh. This is the proverbial ark of Noah. If you make it to the ark, you're safe. You're at the port in the storm. Right. So this is that's why the religion was sent. Right. This is why it was sent. I think, as it concerns the religion being difficult, that's the hadith again. It needs interpretation, or it would require us to really interpret it. Really, I found the difficulty to. I don't know if I want to open this topic. I've been speaking too much, but the difficulty has really to do with how we've regulated faith, or how we've basically placed faith just in the houses of worship. So whereas faith in the past was something that affected society, it affected people's lives, things are now more secularized in the sense that you basically just keep your faith inside your mosque. And I think it's important that the faith that we have shared space, that we have spaces where we keep certain actions of faith, but there's nothing wrong with allowing our faith to empower us or inspire us to do good for non-Muslims and doing good in society. It's what faith in society looks like. It's what it should do. Faith in society doesn't look like you trying to force your religion on somebody else. That's not faith in society. Faith in society is basically that the faith becomes beautiful. So the religion now becomes hard because there's some people who would want it to be kept inside the houses of worship. So it's now difficult. But yeah, big topic though, this particular hadith. But nonetheless, even though that there may be difficulty, we should know that the religion, with that adversity, the religion gives us the means of overcoming, and the means of using that adversity, using that difficulty to forge strong character, to build character, right? To build character because of adversity and being a minority, and the adversities that come with that builds character, to the extent that some of our scholars, a particular scholar, a companion, Ibn Abbas, he would ask Allah to make him amongst the minority, right? He was from the Qalil, being from amongst the minority, because there's a secret there that it builds character amongst so many other things, right? And when Allah talks about the majority in the Quran, He never attributes to the majority anything that's good. وَأَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ وَأَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. And most people don't think, most people don't give thanks to God, so on and so forth. Right? As a short answer to the question. But I think the most practical thing, having means of bringing people together to the masjid, having social dimension to the prayer. So maybe you have the Fajr on Sunday, and maybe you say, okay, we're going to have a potluck. and we're going to have a dars, short read a hadith, right? Or, the families can come, and the families can play. The kids can play, the women can meet, the women can have their potluck as well, so on and so forth. These are means of, tying the hearts to the place of worship. Any other questions? Okay. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Thank you.